Law went to save Luffy at Marineford not because he's such a nice guy, but because he knew that Luffy was a D. He was actually incredibly disappointed when Luffy beat 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒, and his name, Trafalgar D. Water Law, holds the key to the shockingly important role that Law still has to play in the story. If, just like me, you've also always struggled to fully understand Law's thoughts and objectives, and why the hell he's actually still around even after taking down his sworn enemy, today I will unravel everything you ever wanted to know about his character for you.
しかし、おかげで助かったのも事実だが、これで終わりだ。ベルゴさん。
The thing that intrigued me the most about Trafalgar Law when he was first introduced early on in the story was how hard it was to read his thoughts and actions. On 𝚘𝚘 we meet him as this pretty messed up guy in hippie clothes that has fun tormenting his enemies, always with a smirk on his face, which I found immediately intriguing. After the war, and especially after the time skip, however, I was surprised to see that he seemingly had completely lost this chaotic side of him and now felt a lot more serious, always thinking things through and worrying about things that might go wrong. Finally, after dethroning 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒, it was really heartwarming for me to see him grow closer and closer with the Straw Hats, slowly dropping his serious and tense manner and fully subscribing to Luffy's way of handling things.
ここに何をしに来た？
お前をぶっ飛ばしにだ！
Now, what at first glance seems to be an inconsistency with his character turned out to be one of the best character arcs we've gotten in the story. Law's backstory and his personal history with 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒 and 𝚙𝚘𝚙 is one of my all-time favorite flashbacks that I actually dedicated a whole video to. The flashback is structured just like the backstories of all the Straw Hats: death, tragedy, and something that Luffy has to free them from. In the case of Law, that thing is his obsession with 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒. After being saved and loved by 𝚙𝚙𝚘𝚗, who tells him about the will of D, Law believes that he must inherit his savior's will to take down 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒 for the threat he poses to the world.
俺の目的は弟として兄ドフィの暴走を止めることだ。
I think something that's quite easy to overlook is that Law believes that 𝚙𝚙𝚘𝚗 saved him only because he revealed his middle name to him. And as a result, he tries to pay this kindness back by dedicating his whole life to revenge. This obsession is further fueled because Law blames himself for the death of his loved ones. He believes himself to be a failure, which might sound weird to Western fans who I think generally see Law as a pretty damn accomplished character. However, what living in Japan has taught me is that this strong theme of brothers in Dressrosa is not by accident. We of course have this for Luffy and Sabo, who reunite over their shared goal to retrieve Ace's devil fruit.
お前
久しぶりだな。
But for Law, it's particularly important. See, here in Japan, the relationship between older and younger sibling is somewhat sacred. You should always respect your older brother under any circumstances, but it's always his duty to protect his younger siblings. Which is, for instance, why Ace's death was so extremely meaningful. Law, however, despite training to be a doctor, is unable to save his little sister, and we get this heartbreaking scene where he has the exact same reaction as Luffy when she dies. Similarly, he can't protect the other orphans, and I would even go so far as to say that he blames himself for 𝚙𝚙𝚘𝚗𝚒's death as well. See, it never occurred to Law, nor to any Japanese reader I assume, that 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒 would do the unthinkable thing and actually kill his younger sibling. And so, in a sense, Law as an older brother once again had to lose a younger sibling he loved. I hope that this helps you realize why Dressrosa was even more important to Eastern fans than it already was, and why Law is even more popular among fans there. Now, of course, Law as a helpless and traumatized boy is not to blame for any of these, but it didn't change the fact that he always felt guilty about it. In Law's mind, taking down 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚗𝚒 and fulfilling Corazon's mission was the only way he could remedy himself from this guilt. And so up until 𝙼𝚘𝚘𝚢, just like Luffy and the other supernova, he's mostly focusing on getting stronger. And so the Law we meet at the auction house is simply enjoying how much closer he's gotten to Dofi in terms of strength.
シャンブルス
After the war, however, things change. Law realizes that the new era is coming now, and with it, his chance to make a move. So he decides to save Luffy, the person who he saw punching a celestial dragon and becoming the center of attention at Marineford, because he sees someone else who's capable of fulfilling Corazon's hopes for the D-Clan. And so after he spends 2 years planning his move on Doflamingo, he doesn't hesitate to team up with Luffy once they cross paths once again on Punk Hazard, completely by accident, by the way. Law very quickly understands, though, that without Luffy, his plan would already have failed right here on Punk Hazard, and more is taken in by Luffy's ability to master any situation, no matter how impossible it may seem. And so after being taken out by Dofi and having to leave the fight he was waiting for his entire life to Luffy, he even says that in the case that Luffy should lose and die, he wanted to die next to him.
負けたなら俺もここで
At this point, Law fully trusts and respects our captain. And yet, when Luffy finally defeats Dofi after what feels like 12,473 episodes, when all citizens of Dressrosa are swept away by tears of joy and relief, this is the reaction we get from Law. Now, at first I thought that Law simply had to process what had happened, but this is pretty much the only reaction we ever get from him. Even though his big goal has finally been achieved, he still doesn't feel free and fulfilled. The weight on his shoulders is somehow still there. And I think it's this why so many people are confused about Law's character arc. The true resolution to his past, where he can finally embrace Luffy's deed and come back into the light, is a much smaller moment during the epilogue of Dressrosa. Now, the moment I'm talking about is this small interaction Law has with Sengoku, the former fleet admiral who had been Corazon's supervisor within the Marines.
これがコラさんの望む D の生き方なのかわからねえ D
Now, what both Sengoku and I realized in this moment is the fact that Law has always assumed that he had been saved for being a D, an enemy of the gods with high expectations in him to fulfill his role. The beauty of this scene is how Sengoku breaks Law's worldview with one sentence and frees him from his past.
死なんては何も知らなかったはずだ。つまり、そのためにお前を助けたわけじゃない。受けた愛に
And so it's these two panels here that actually mark the conclusion of Law's character arc and the end of his suffering. Oda's subtle genius. Okay, so Law's arc is over now, right? He has done what he set out to do and even found peace by embracing the unconditional love that Corazon had for him. So why exactly is Law still there? What is his purpose in the story and what goal does he have now? 3 common theories I see popping up a lot are that A, Law will betray Luffy and go for the One Piece itself, B, that Law is actually a member of the secret marine organization SWORD, or C, that Law will sacrifice himself to perform the immortality surgery on Luffy. Here are my thoughts on these and why I don't think it's gonna be either of the 3. Okay, so Law could betray Luffy based on the idea that pirate alliances always end in betrayal, but given the fact that Law was not only freed from his burden by Luffy, but also was prepared to die with him, kinda tells me that this doesn't make too much sense. The whole point of Law's arc was to show how kind he actually is at heart. So as long as Oda doesn't pull another Kanjuro, I'm gonna say with a lot of confidence that this won't happen. Now, the sword thing on the other hand could be true, especially given that Corazon was a marine spy as well. Drake, for example, has infiltrated Kaido's crew, and if Aokiji is also a member of the group, he has infiltrated Blackbeard. Now, Law has mostly been just traveling with his own crew, but I guess you could argue that he technically infiltrated the Straw Hats. However, to be honest, I don't quite see the point of it. Law is already a fully fleshed out and interesting character. Plus, he's a devoted D, who are the enemies of the Celestial Dragons. But it's possible, I guess. Now, while I think that Law might very well die at some point and use his ability on someone else maybe, I don't think it'll be Luffy. Here's why. Luffy's goal is to find the One Piece with his friends. Otherwise, it'll not be worth it. I mean, in some way or form, becoming Pirate King is only a tool for Luffy, a milestone to fulfill a bigger dream that doesn't just include himself. So if Law were to sacrifice himself for him, even without Luffy's permission, it would taint his journey. Remember, Luffy didn't want to hear anything that Rayleigh knew, and he detests people who use others as tools, like how Big Mom used her daughter for political alliances. So I can easily imagine a scene where Law tries to sacrifice himself, but Luffy stops him, similarly to how he stopped Sanji and Robin from sacrificing themselves for him as well.
お前がいねえと俺は海賊王になれねえ。ロビン、まだお前の口から聞いてねえ。生きたいと言え。
Also remember that on Thriller Bark, Zoro, Sanji, and Robin knew that Luffy must never know about Zoro almost dying by sacrificing himself. So Ohara, you might say now, what will Law do then? I personally think that Law now has a new goal and will loyally fight side by side with Luffy till the very end. And this goal is to find the true meaning behind the D clan and the will of D. He has been obsessed with it his entire life, and now finally with Luffy has found someone that actually acts in exactly the way Corazon explained it to him. He was there after all, both when Luffy punched Charlos and when Luffy punched Doflamingo. And so I think that Law is simply interested in reaching Laugh Tale, not to become Pirate King, but to learn the true history, something we see him discussing with Robin. And when you think about it, Law actually has the most unsuitable crew compared to most other supernova to reach Laugh Tale. He even sent them away just before carrying out his master plan against Dofi. His men seem to be more a crew of doctors than of fighters, and I think that's what their role is gonna be for the rest of the story. In other words, now that Law doesn't feel obligated to be a good D anymore, he has freely chosen the goal to become one by following the man he now believes can actually become Pirate King.
お前には麦わら屋を倒せねえ。あいつからシーザーを取り返すこともできやしねえ。
And now we get into the spicy stuff, because interestingly enough, Oda might have already told us what Law's role will be based on his naming scheme. Law unites a lot of references to British seafaring. As Oda stated himself, Law was inspired in part by the real-life 18th century pirate Edward Lowe, who was known for his cruelty, like cutting off enemy body parts. He had a deprived childhood, surviving by stealing, and was brought up by a family of criminals. Sound familiar? So basically, Oda took this real-life pirate and gave him a twist. Law is rumored to be cruel, but actually is not. Plus, he actually cuts up people, but only using his devil fruit ability. There are a lot more British influences though. The White City in the North Blue, where Law was born, is most likely inspired by the White City in London in Northern Europe, which is famous for hosting the Japanese-British exhibition. Law literally sails on a yellow submarine, a homage to the famous song by the Beatles. However, it's Law's name itself that has the most clues. In Japanese, Trafalgar is actually spelled Torafaruga, with Luffy actually calling him Tora. And Tora literally means tiger, keeping Law in line with the animal theme of the warlords. Now, the other two major clues in his name are again Trafalgar as well as water, because in Japanese, the combination of the taboo name water, Wateru, and his given name Law, Ro, form the word Waterloo, Wateruro. Now, the Battle of Trafalgar and the Battle of Waterloo are two of the most famous battles in history, fought in the same war that led to the downfall of Emperor Napoleon. During the Battle of Trafalgar off the coast of Spain, the British were led to victory by the strategy of naval hero Horatio Nelson, who not only had lost an arm, but was also shot during the battle. Waterloo, on the other hand, became famous as the downfall of Emperor Napoleon. In this sense, the Battle of Trafalgar and Nelson wounds would represent Dressrosa, which is also inspired by Spain. Waterloo then would represent Wano and the end of the Emperor, in this case Kaido, which was enabled by the previous battles. Now, of course, Law is one of these central figures fighting in Wano right now, and it will be interesting to see what will happen to him after that battle is won. There has always been a strong theme of death surrounding his character. The Sergeant of Death, his Devil Fruit ability, the Death number 4 in Japanese with his 4 names and his bounty of 440 million, there's a ton. So Law might actually very well die, but I would personally prefer to see him become the happy and free person that Corazon originally wanted him to become. And actually you can watch his analysis by clicking right here. Thanks for watching.